The rate of change is going to accelerate, and then at moments there'll be deceleration. But surely in 5 years, the world of human capital is going to look a world of different to what it does today. I think that AI benefits from all of those previous evolutions combined with this convergence of trends to then lead to this moment of acceleration. And far smarter people than me, Sergey Brin being a great example, say, this is going to be the biggest technological revolution humanity has ever seen.
All right, welcome back to the Human Capitalist podcast. I am Trent Cotton, your host and the Human Capitalist. I like to explore topics that are on the cutting edge of HR and TA tech. And today I have got probably one of the best embodiments of both of those. The guest that I have today, I heard for the first time. I think it was the very first session that I went to in RecFest last year. And I sat through the second session only because my brain was on such fire that I was texting people and I didn't realize that the session had ended. So I am really excited. Been after him since RecFest last year. No shade, but trying to get him on the show because he's just got a lot of passion, very unique insights, and a really, really cool company. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Brent, thank you so much for having me on. As you know, I'm a big fan of everything that you do. I don't think anyone has ever said such nice words about me speaking publicly. So I will send you the payment for that later. I'm sorry it's taken us a little bit of time to do this, but I'm very excited, man. It's always a pleasure to chat, and I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, why don't you do an intro for yourself and also to what HackerJob does? Because I think you all are trying to solve a pretty unique problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Mark Chaffey. I'm the co-founder and CEO at HackerJob. We founded HackerJob 10 years ago now, which is pretty insane. I was studying at university in London, and it's been a wild ride since then. I now spend most of my time in the US, live in New York, and absolutely love the city. But our team of about 100 people is across the UK, the US, Colombia, and Romania. So travel a lot. Customers are global as well. In terms of HackerJob, we've evolved a lot over the years. The best way to think of us today is the largest community of dedicated tech professionals globally. So we've got a community of just over 1 million members. And we've built this really powerful AI-based platform called HackerJob Intelligence that we use to match those talent to jobs. And rather than people applying for jobs, which we know doesn't particularly work well and, has become even more noise given all the AI tools, we actually flip the model. The company makes the first move and reaches out to the engineer. And so because of that, the candidate experience is really great. About 70% of the requests a candidate gets, they accept. And the engagement is really high. About 90% of the candidates that companies reach out to get back to them. And we're, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. I know this episode comes out a little bit later, but by the time this does come out, we'd release a lot more products. But yesterday we just released voice mode on HackerJob Intelligence. You can now just speak to it and it effectively becomes your sourcing agent, which is really, really exciting. So yeah, things are moving quick and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
So it sounds like you're almost building the Jarvis for recruiters from Iron Man.
I think that's a brilliant, yeah. I think it's a brilliant mental model. Actually, one of our customers yesterday said, "Oh my God, this is like speaking to a colleague." And I was like, that is the mental model. That is exactly how we're thinking about this. And it's a really powerful frame. I think one of the things that we haven't yet fully grasped in this topic of AI is so much of knowledge work today is done in a browser clicking buttons. You go to www.isims.com, you open a rec, you click a load of buttons, you review profiles, you click a load of buttons, etc., etc. I actually think these systems are going to get so smart, you're going to orchestrate them inside your own system, whether that be Slack or Teams or however your business communicates, just like you do with a colleague. And then the system will be going away and doing all of that work, doing all those clicks, et cetera, and then just giving you the results where you need it. And so I think the Jarvis for recruitment's a really great mental model. I think this additional colleague in your teams are a really powerful mental model for what we're doing.
Well, let's kind of zoom out of kind of the TA part of HR. You have a pretty unique insight of just the the massive impact that AI is having on the workforce, on the market, and on human capital. Where do you see the world of human capital changing over the next 1 to 2 years?
I think the scale of change will be bigger than we can anticipate today, but it will take longer than we realize. And I think the reason why it will take longer than we realize is because large organizations still have inertia. They still move slowly. JP Morgan Chase came out recently and said we're being very risk averse when it comes to AI inside the organization. That's just an example of how people are thinking about it. But if you could take that question and say 5 years, 10 years, it's impossible to predict. The only certainty is it's going to look a hell of a lot different to what it does today. And, there was obviously going to be job displacement. This idea that there isn't going to be job displacement is simply not true. The event that we met at, one colleague or one attendee told me that the reason they bought a product was, or they couldn't get budget for buying a new product. So they said, well, actually, I don't need my recruitment coordinator anymore. Can I take their salary and buy this tool instead? And the CFO was like, yeah, correct. So it's already happening. Job displacement is already happening. But alongside that, a load of new jobs are going to get created. So net, I think we'll be in a great place as a society. And I think that hopefully the world of work becomes more interesting for the work that is left. But I think it's almost impossible to predict actually, what's a software engineer do in 5 years? What does a TA person do in 5 years? I mean, these questions I'm happy to have a wild guess at, but the rate of change is so fast, it's hard to know.
No, I agree with you. And it's funny that you mentioned, the impact on the workforce and kind of how we're going to have to streamline a lot of operations, and JP Morgan. Because this week, actually, I can't remember who put it out, but JP Morgan actually said that it's implementing AI-driven efficiencies to reduce the operations of its workforce by 10%.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see this. I mean,
I do too. But to me, I grew up as a banker and even spent a lot of time in HR in banking. So for me to see like one of the largest banks embracing AI this early in the process, to me, it was kind of a signal of going, okay, wow, this is moving a lot faster than I thought. Because usually fintech, well, not fintech, but the financial services, like you said, they're very risk averse. They're afraid of all the regulations, and I'm thankful. I want them to protect my finances, but to see them move so fast, I'm like, oh wow, this is really going to impact us a lot sooner than we thought.
And I think that so many of these big public statements are more nuanced than what we will give them credit for. And, Jamie Dimon was leaked, I don't know when it was, 8 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, saying, I'm sure all of you could be doing the same job, say that your organization, your department could have the same output with 10% less workforce.
Yes.
It's just natural inefficiencies. And so I wonder how many CEOs, leaders are using the AI why now to drive efficiency changes that they've wanted to do for a long time. I'm not sure if you've been following the Klarna CEO. He was one of the first to come out and say, we're getting rid of all of support and we're just going to have AI only support. Last week, they came out and announced they're actually bringing some of their support staff back. And so people are like, see, look, we told you AI isn't going to take our jobs. Right. And it's like, well, hang on, let's peel that onion. They got rid of 700 support staff. They brought 100 back, right? It's not like, okay, we haven't gone to zero, but I haven't gone back to 700 support staff. And so change is happening already. And to your point, large enterprises we're in a late stage procurement process with one of the largest consulting businesses in the world. They had a 12-month process to assess our AI. And they just were, being risk averse. They've reduced that to a 1-month process because they want to be leveraging more AI tools. They want to get more AI tools into the business. So to your point, I think we will see adoption in enterprise quicker, but we're speaking this week as Workday's just gone through this, court case. And, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So the rate of change is going to accelerate, and then at moments there'll be deceleration, but surely in 5 years, the world of human capital is going to look a world of different to what it does today.
Well, let's kind of zero in a little bit on the recruitment industry and maybe even recruitment tech. I know that we've talked about just some of the changes that we foresee that there's a pretty high probability. I know I've shared some of my views, but what are some of the trends or tech that you think that should be adopted in order to stay ahead, specifically in TA?
I think if you take the hiring funnel, at the highest level, it's some type of attraction, going through that process. I think we will see the earlier parts of the funnel have a bigger impact on AI initially. And the reason for that is because I don't think anybody should be using AI to do automated decision making at this point. I don't think it's
Agreed.
at that point that. And getting a new job is a really big deal. Hiring somebody is a really big deal. And until we're very, very sure that we don't have systems taking biased decisions or incorrect decisions, I don't think we want automated decision making. So therefore, you're going to end up a lot more in the workflow space and a lot more in the co-pilot space. So I think the three common use cases I hear from our customers is we are inundated with applications. How can we leverage AI to better understand who we should prioritize in the application? Not auto-rejecting people, but if I've got 100 CVs or resumes, these 10 I should reach out to immediately, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's getting very excited about interview scheduling. I would argue interview scheduling you could solve about AI, but whatever, there's some good AI solutions out there. So I think everyone's very excited in that space. And then these interview co-pilots, MetaView, BrightHire, that will actually join the interview, become a note taker, and have started to make recommendations on if someone should pass or fail. I think they're probably the three categories that I hear from customers are impacting today. If we zoom out 18 months, I think the answer is probably a little bit different.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. It's funny. You were talking about scheduling. I've been on a couple of calls recently, panels, fireside chats, and that seems to be what everyone associates with AI. And I was on a call yesterday, and somebody brought that up. Yeah, we're using AI in our automation. I said, okay, you do understand that you can have automation without AI, right? Automation is just writing a workflow. Like you're writing an equation for something to follow. If this, then that. AI is going a little bit, not a little bit. It's a huge leap in the right direction, in the different direction. So I think there's such a base knowledge difference according to TA organizations. And I think that, because I know we were both, Jamie had both of us at RL100 in Boston, and, I'm talking to a lot of the TA leaders, just some of this stuff like that I just take for granted, and I've learned through trial and error with prompting, was like mind blowing for them. I'm going, whoa, you're behind. So I think it's really interesting. And then too, you were talking about AI on the scheduling piece. I think it was 2014, 2015. I had an AI assistant that I could CC in an email to someone and say, hey, hit reply all, Amy, and I would say my AI assistant will help schedule some time for both of us. And it had a human in the loop. So if you responded something back and it couldn't really understand what you were saying, it would send me an email and say, how do you want me to respond? So I did it. I used her with one of my executives that I was supporting, and I got one of those human in the loop requests. And so whenever I read the email, the senior executive had written to my AI assistant thinking that it was a real person, because it said, Amy, you are so incredibly fast and efficient and blah, blah, blah. If you ever decide that you want to move out of talent acquisition and stop working for Trent, please let me know. I will hire you tomorrow. And so I called him. I said, so you're trying to hire my assistant? He goes, she wasn't supposed to tell you. I said, it's an AI. He goes, no, it's not. I mean, he could not believe it. He goes, it's efficient. I said, I know. That's why I like it. So that kind of stuff's been around for a while. But I always chuckle whenever I hear people talk about, yeah, the automation, and I can send them a link and it automatically just schedules everything. I'm like, yeah, well, that's more automation than it is AI. But hey, kudos, you're moving in the right direction.
I actually think, I love that example, and shout out to a business called Fixer, which is now doing that kind of assistant business. They're headquartered out the UK, but absolutely crushing it. But I think what's interesting about that anecdote and those examples, something that we think about a lot internally is ultimately the end customer doesn't care about the technology you are using to solve their problem. They just want their problem solved 10 times better than what it is today. And I think scheduling is a great example of this. It's like captured everyone's imagination from an AI perspective. To your point, most scheduling solutions are pretty simple automations. And actually, it doesn't matter, because scheduling is now better than what it was before. And we were talking a little bit about product marketing before this call, but part of the challenge with this is vendors know that right now, CHROs are telling TA leaders, go and buy an AI tool. So every solution, every HR tech company out there is now positioning themselves as an AI company, regardless of if there's real AI in the mix or not. And so it becomes this very, very confusing space. To your point, the one thing I would say to all TA leaders, anyone listening to this, is you need to get comfortable using these tools yourself. I was similar to you in the sense on, the RO100 tour that we did in Boston, also in Chicago and New York. I was shocked at how few people, or how many people, had never touched ChatGPT in the room. And it's like, guys, this should be your everyday tool. Like, this is table stakes stuff at this point. Can you use Microsoft Word? Cool. Well, then you should be using ChatGPT. Like, that's how you should be thinking about this, right? And so I do think that the range of maturity inside organizations and practitioners is probably the biggest it's ever going to be, because in 12 months' time, if you're not comfortable with these tools, I'm pretty sure your job is going to be done by somebody that is comfortable with these tools.
I agree. And I saw an interesting stat, I think it was from McKinsey, that said by the end of this year, 75% of the leaders that they had polled said that they will move from co-piloting of AI to operationalizing it. And just the span, I mean, so if you think about the impact of that particular technology from 2022, whenever it kind of, took the stage, to present, to going, now we're going to operationalize it. It took a lot longer for cloud. It took a lot longer for web. I mean, everything is moving so incredibly fast.
But I totally agree. I think that it's also partly because there's a convergence of trends. So a lot of the RPA work that UiPath are famous for, right, gets accelerated when you layer in AI agents on top of it. And so, and I think we're going to see a lot more kind of physical AI with, robots and machines and all of that whole world. And Waymo is incredible in what they're doing. So I think you've got this convergence of trends. And then also AI piggybacks off all of the previous trends that you mentioned, right? The internet, smartphones, cloud, it's got the best distribution in the world because 4 billion people are using one of these every day. So, actually it's got this amazing distribution network. When the internet, I was listening to an interview with Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, yesterday, and he was like, when the internet first came out, we'd get notified each week of what websites have been added to the internet. It's you can't quite imagine that, right? That was when I think you said in the early 90s. And so I think that AI benefits from all of those previous evolutions combined with this convergence of trends to then lead to this moment of acceleration. And, far smarter people than me, Sergey Brin being a great example, say, this is going to be the biggest technological revolution humanity has ever seen. And that's why for me, it's more fun than it ever has been, because we can use these technologies to solve existing problems in brand new ways. And I think that's really cool.
I agree. It's, to me, it's fascinating. I'm not deeply tech like you. I know enough just to be dangerous. But I'm always willing to kind of try a new tool if it makes me move quicker, faster, more efficiently. And it gives me more time to spend on the things that I do need to have full attention, full brain power on. But just the sheer volume of change sometimes can be a little overwhelming. So let's talk a little bit more about HackerJobs. So I want you to tell the story, because this is something that kind of blew my mind. When you were doing your presentation, I think you gave an example of a company that was looking for, I think it was Java developers or something like that. And rather than the AI going out and just looking at Java developers as a skill, your AI actually went 2 or 3 steps ahead. Can you kind of walk through that story? Because to me, that's whenever no offense, but I stopped listening to you and I was texting people. What's funny though is that whenever you gave that talk, over the course, that was on a Thursday, over the course of that week, 4 or 5 people very close to me, including my husband, had gotten laid off. And so I was texting all of them going, get on HackerJob, get on HackerJob. So tell the story. It's just, I think it's going to really help a lot of recruiters understand the real power of real AI, because it's mind blowing. So I'll shut up. You go.
So if you think about the power of AI, actually what it's enabling is this new architecture in how hiring is done online. So since the 1990s, when Monster.com and whatever, everything came online, there's been like a bunch of evolution at the UX layer. The platforms are easier to use, they're quicker, blah, blah, blah. But the fundamental architecture is still the same. It's these keyword-based matching systems. And so, hey, I'm looking, and that's why we created the boolean string, right? Like the boolean string to me is hilarious. It's like this bizarre way that recruiters communicate with databases online. And candidates got very good. I'm sure you remember this. Candidates used to update their resume and then in white text at the bottom would write all of the keywords in the world. So it doesn't look like you can see it, but if you hovered over it or highlighted it, you could. And so, look, when we first came online, like we were, using keyword-based matching, our value add was that candidates were actually going to verify these skills and show that they can do them. What happened about 2 years ago now, we had just closed our Series B fundraising. ChatGPT had been around for about 6 months. And we ran an internal hackathon to see, can we do anything with LLMs that would challenge what we've always done? And actually, the answer was yes. And so we took a pretty bold decision to rebuild our core matching engine from scratch. And that's what we released at RecFest in Nashville last year. And what this matching engine now does is we created a knowledge graph where, we have over 50 million unique data points on candidate skills, jobs, companies over the years. We were able to fine tune our own language model, which then enabled users to search for talent, and our system would look for the context, not the keyword. And so an example to bring it to life, let's say, hey, I'm looking for a data scientist that needs to know machine learning and have cloud computing experience. Our knowledge graph is able to look at a candidate and say, hey, this person's used AWS SageMaker, which is a tool to deploy machine learning models on AWS. And therefore, they're a good fit for your requirements, even though they may not talk about machine learning, cloud computing, or data scientists. And so suddenly you're able to surface talent in a much more rich way than what you were before. And you don't rely on these very basic kind of like keyword stack ranks. Now, that was what we announced at RecFest, and hopefully there was a moment when you went like, oh, wow, this is cool. Oh, yeah. The update that we shared this month takes that one step further. So that was great for skills. But let's say I need somebody that has experience working on a payments platform. Okay. The challenge there is that, well, there isn't really a knowledge graph around payments platform. It's not quite the same thing. So what we've now built is a reasoning engine. So HackerJob Intelligence will read a candidate's resume and be able to reason, is it likely that this person had payments platform experience? Maybe they were on a team at JP Morgan that works with payment gateways. Maybe it's something else. And so now HackerJob Intelligence can take any requirement. You can just speak to it, give it any requirement in the world. It will be able to read a candidate's resume, add to the knowledge graph, and then be able to reason back to you, hey, this is why this person's a really good fit. And that just has not been technically feasible before, which is why we're really excited about the impact this is going to have on online hiring.
And it's funny, that reasoning part is always the pushback that I get. There's two. We'll cover both of them. The first one is AI can only, I think most recruiters are looking at AI as being a more extensive Boolean. And that's, if you're listening to this and that's how you think of it, I need you to just just send a nuclear bomb to that thought, because it's not what it is. So can you, in layman's terms, kind of explain a little bit more about the reasoning? Because I think that is a huge blind spot of understanding in not just TA, but all of HR, in my opinion.
I think you're spot on, by the way, about people that have that frame around Booleans. And I'll use Booleans as the example. So in order to speak to a computer, like computers are binary, they're 0 and 1. And programming languages are just abstractions of ways for us to be able to communicate with a computer. What a large language model is, what ChatGPT is just the ultimate abstraction layer, which is you can now speak to a computer in natural language, in just English, in just plain text. And so what was a Boolean? Boolean was like the programming language for recruiters. It was like, this is our abstraction layer to be able to speak to a database of resumes or LinkedIn or whatever it may be. Well, now what's happened, that was kind of like the first wave of large language models and everything that's happened. You now have like inference time reasoning. And so when you send your query into O3, ChatGPT, or OpenAI's most recent model, it would actually take time to think like a human. and actually process and reason and then come back with, okay, this is what I think the answer is. And so you apply that to recruitment. Well, when you're taking a brief from a hiring manager, they say, hey, Trent, we need a senior software engineer that's got experience with Java, microservices, and AWS. They need to have worked at a Series B startup, and they need to be commutable to New York City because we're going to be back in the office 2 days a week.
Okay.
Some of that stuff, historically, they'd put into a Boolean, and then you do the human part, which is I'm going to read somebody's resume, and I'm be like, oh, cool, Clay, that's a Series B company. Oh, great, they're in Bushwick. That can come as a commutable distance. Oh, great, they've got these skills, etc. And that's what you're doing as a human. You're adding a layer of reasoning to the profile that you're reviewing against your requirements. Well, now, platforms like HackerJob Intelligence can do that for you because this technology enables a computer to reason like a human in natural language. And so just in plain text, describe what you want. HackerJob Intelligence will go and read a candidate's resume like a human would. And more importantly, explain back to you why they are a good fit or a bad fit. And then it's up to you to turn around and be like, actually, I disagree with you, HackerJob Intelligence. That's cool. You just tell the system you disagree with it and you have a conversation. Okay, you missed this. Actually, this is why you're wrong, etc. And so it is like so fundamental to how humans interact with computers. This is why it's our strong view that, like, unless you're willing to recreate your architecture and system from scratch, you're not going to be able to benefit from this technology as a HR tech learner because it's just so fundamentally different to what it's been done before.
I love that. But it kind of reminds me early in my TA career, we had a dedicated sourcing team, and my boss at the time actually, because a lot of sourcing teams at the time, they were just very general. Like they were just great researchers, loved making cold calls, loved building lists. She went one step further and made them niche down. So I think I started with commercial, but I ended with recruiting for mortgage. And the individual that supported my team was so ingrained in what was going on in the market from just the mortgage industry. I could give her 3 or 4 lines and say, hey, I need this, this, and this in Destin, Florida. I didn't have to have this huge intake because she understood all the periphery information. And as you were describing what the agent does, to me, it was almost like that's what Monica did for me. She went in and said, okay, she was like the beautiful mind connecting all the little dots and everything, and then would deliver something. But now, rather than having a dedicated sourcing person, you have a dedicated agent. Is that kind of a good correlation, I guess?
Spot on. I mean, we were talking about this just beforehand, but I think, or maybe it's actually whilst we were recording, but I love this mental model that these systems become your colleague. And so think of this system as Monica. This is now your Monica. And what we've got to make sure is that these systems are as good as like expert level Monicas, right? There's a lot of sources out there that are fine, they're good. Like these systems need to be able to be like the absolute expert. And that should be the bar that we set and the bar that we give them. So for us, it's not about replacing recruiters in the hiring process. It's like, what are the areas where you can supercharge recruitment using agents?
Absolutely.
And then where do you have those human interactions? And the difference between HackerJob Intelligence and Monica, HackerJob Intelligence can do it for 80,000 profiles in about 8 seconds. Monica can Monica can do it for maybe 100 profiles in half an hour, maybe, and so like just the scale that these systems can operate is so much greater than what a human can do. So I mean, brilliant comparable and definitely a great mental model for those listening on how to think about some of these agentic systems.
Well, and two, I think, people hear, maybe you're not really into AI and you're listening to this as a TA or HR person, but you hear AI and you hear machine learning. So the piece though that you're talking, the agent comes and it says, hey, here are 10 or 15 people I think are really great. And maybe 10 of them are great, 5 of them are a little off. And you communicate that to the agent. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's where the learning comes in and it says, oh, okay, well, let me adjust. You don't have to say adjust this. It does it on its own.
Totally.
Right.
And I think one of the next frontiers of the development of these models is going to be memory. And so you can do it today. You can ask ChatGPT, like, describe me based on everything you know about me. And it, has a good idea. I think when the models themselves have memory built in, when the agents have memory, it becomes even better. than what it is, and computer memory is always going to be better than human memory. So you're just going to be able to remember more. To your point, there's been machine learning systems for a long time. Pre LLM era, HackerJob leveraged machine learning systems where, based on our customers' behavior, we'd recommend candidates, at a different rate. And so it was actually interesting. I was chatting to Vlad, our CTO, who, is a genius and is, the man behind a lot of this stuff. And, I was like, are any of those machine learning principles and models still relevant in this era? And he said, probably not, because actually just the rate of model development is getting so much better. You can do it with LLMs instead of leveraging some of those older ML models. But yeah, there's a lot of comparisons, and I think, like I said, I think the one of the next frontiers that we're going to see over the next 12 months in the foundational models from OpenAI and X and Meta, etc., will be how much memory these models can have, and then I think that again is an extra layer to these agents.
I love that. And it actually, this whole conversation reminds me a little bit of a post I warned you I was going to get you to unpack on here. So you said that vibe coding is describing developers basically going in and saying what they want in plain English, and then AI writes the code, and it's becoming second nature for a lot of engineers today. So they're using things like Cursor, and I mean, you can even, I think Claude or Anthropic just released that, they're upping the coding. So it seems like GPT or OpenAI and Anthropic are trying to battle for who's going to be the best coder. And then, Google every once in a while come out and sucker punch both of them. But you also introduce, so we got vibe coding, AI assistant kind of gets a lot of the coding done. Engineer can go in and kind of do the stuff that can't really be done by AI yet. You also introduced vibe recruiting. So I want you to unpack. Let's go into the future. What does vibe recruiting look like?
So this is just a big shout out to Frankie, Vic, and Chris on our team who spotted this. We were onboarding our users to our latest version of HackerJob Intelligence. We've been doing it for about the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks. And we were trying to get them to understand the power of HackerJob Intelligence. It was like, people would like say, what are you hiring for? And they'd write Java. And we're like, no. You're like still thinking in the old system. Like, just describe what you're looking for. And they'd like do it. And then they'd come back and be like, yeah, but this person doesn't have, I don't know, an average tenure of 2 years. You're like, okay, so just say we need an average tenure of 2 years. And it'd be this light bulb moment that you'd watch them. They'd go, okay. And they're like, oh, I can search anything unstructured. And Chris, our data scientist, was like watching back some of these calls, and he was like, why are we getting them to type? Why don't they just speak? And Vic was like, yeah, that makes total sense. So you can now just speak to HackerJob Intelligence. And the point being is you don't have to have perfect thought. Like, we would watch our users do this. They'd like look to the sky and be like, how do I describe this in a perfect way? You can just waffle. You can just speak to it like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And then the point of vibe coding, which is a bit of a meme online, is like, you don't actually go and touch the code. You just keep describing and then see how far you can get. So it's like, hey, go and build me this. And if it doesn't work, you're like, okay, we'll go and fix this or whatever. And we want to create this same ethos with recruitment. Like, cool, describe what you're looking for. HackerJob Intelligence comes back. And you go, no, that's wrong. Actually, I need this. Great. Just keep that conversation going. And so we're going to be doing a LinkedIn Live in the next couple of weeks on this. But I strongly believe voice is the new UI. And that is how most work is going to get done. Not sure if you saw the news with OpenAI and Johnny Ive's company this week around them going to build a device. I'm sure that is going to be a voice-first device, probably without a screen.
Well, Johnny was actually interviewed about it and said, "Hey, what are you bringing?" I think Sam, when he made the announcement, he actually said that he was playing with a prototype that Johnny had built, and it was just like, "This is what we need." What is it? He picked up his iPhone. He says, "This is the technology that we have been stuck with for over a decade. It's time for a change." And I was just like, "Okay." You can't even say the next iPhone because I don't even think that it's mind blowing. Again, I just I can't wait.
I think it comes back to why do we have screens? The reason, and again, it comes back to what I was saying about knowledge work. You have screens because that's where you go to click buttons, and actually, like clicking buttons is not always going to be the most efficient way to do it. Sometimes it might be, but I think when you've got like the Jarvis example where you're just voice as the UI, actually a screen effectively just becomes a display. Like it is just like a dashboard to show me something. It is not where work gets done. And so I think that's this like big change. And work could mean play in this instance, right? Like I don't text a friend, I just voice note them and it voice notes me back and blah, blah, blah. I mean, some of that obviously you already do today. So yeah, I think that voice as a UI is definitely the next frontier. Well, not definitely, I think using the word definitely in this moment with the rate of change is naive. Is a strong bet that voice is the next UI that we all kind of use. And so vibe recruiting is like a fun way to lean into that. It's like, okay, cool. Get off the keyboard, bin your Boolean, and just speak to what you want and keep having that conversation until you find the right candidate that you want to hire.
Well, and again, I mean, we keep using the Iron Man, but, I think of how many scenes, Tony Stark is in his, whatever you call it, tech center or whatever, and he's talking to Jarvis, and Jarvis is pulling all of this stuff up on that hologram screen. And the two of them are reasoning through a problem together. And whenever I hear you talk, that's kind of where you see recruiting going. Is that correct?
Yeah, and actually, I hadn't even considered the screen element, but you're right in the phrase that used hologram, because actually you don't even need a screen when your glasses can be the hologram, and then really voice is everything. So absolutely, I see the future of recruitment being a two-way conversation, and it's recruiter and agent, and you did a brilliant presentation that shows how many specialist agents you can have, because actually from agents is still early, but it seems like the multi-agent architecture is really what you want to build. You want very specialist agents with very clear goals around what they need to go and do. And so yes, that back and forth I think is exactly the right framing, which by the way, Trent, something I always find interesting is like if you ever worked with a really good external recruiter, a headhunter or whatever, that back and forth, that dialogue is so much about what makes them great. It's actually the market insight they're able to bring. They challenge you when you need to be challenged, all of this stuff. And that's a relationship that great TA professionals are going to have with their AI agents.
And it's funny whenever, because a lot of the stuff that I did early on was executive recruiting, and I came into recruiting from a business standpoint. So I got along with my clients more than I did my HR team because I understood my clients. I mean, well, for numerous reasons, but I was spending so much time trying to be the HR recruiter, and then I found out, hey, my clients actually like it because whenever they say back-end yield spread, I know what they mean. When they say portfolio runoff, I know what they meant. They didn't have to dumb it down. They didn't have to explain. And in my mind, I was already building the search based off of just that conversation. And, to fast forward 21 years later and see that AI is going to be able to do that is pretty freaking exciting to me. So let's switch gears and then we'll move into rapid fire. I always like to ask people, and especially to CEOs, what is a unique people problem that you had to solve? What did it teach you?
I mean, one of my mental models is the outcome of the business or outcome of any business is really just the outcome of the output of the people that work there. So at the end of the day, people is everything. After doing this for 10 years, I've had many, many, many people problems. I think if I was to give one, and it's always good to give a more vulnerable one, at the start of last year, one of our senior team left, which kind of left a bit of a gap. I didn't officially have a number two at that point, but left a bit of a gap as somebody that I often described him as my sparring partner internally. And off the back of that, I promoted somebody into a new role, much broader role. And I think this has been true of so many people in my HackerJob journey. People will always surprise you in a positive way when you give them more and more responsibility. As long as they've got those underlying traits, really great growth mindset, really open to feedback, very driven, want to work hard, people will always surprise you. And what I've learned about myself is I can be a little bit of a control freak and, like to own stuff. But actually, work happens far better, far quicker at a higher standard when I give people clear ownership and clear accountability. And I think going through that process at the start of last year, the reorg that we did off the back of it, and then just watching so many people flourish under a leadership style that is far more like give them the responsibility. And it doesn't mean like get out of their way and never challenge them. I don't buy that at all. I constantly challenge our team. It's like what I see my role to do. but it's like giving them that ownership. And I think people will always surprise you. So I think that's one of the biggest leadership and management lessons I've had in the last kind of 12, 18 months.
Awesome. One of my favorite leaders that I worked for, I was at an institution. It was like every 2 years they were moving management around because they wanted all of their managers to be multifaceted, which I liked. But it was like right whenever I would get one trained for me, and they would move them. So Sibylla became my manager, and I knew her because I kind of supported her line of business. So there was already a relationship there. First meeting that I had with her, first official one-on-one, we went through the update, and at the end she said, I want you to understand my definition of leadership because it's going to change how you and I interact. I said, okay, bring it. I was ready. She says, my job is to make you so uncomfortable that you're forced to grow. And she made good on that promise. I mean, never in my career, if someone gives me something to do, I am going to do it, sometimes at the risk of my own mental health or health, because that's just how I'm wired. It was the only time in my career that I was managing an international project for the bank. And I went to her and I was like, Sibylla, I think I'm way over my skis. They're talking about shit I don't know what they're talking about, and they're doing it in another language, so it makes it even more complicated. And she says, are you uncomfortable? I said, yeah, very. She goes, good. How are you going to get comfortable? And I am so glad she did that, because now whenever I get comfortable, I get very scared, because it's like, all right, I got to go do something else. So I love that. I love that. So you're advocating lead with context and accountability versus control and consequence.
Oh, beautifully said. 100%. And I reminded one of our long-standing team members the other day. He said to me, we were talking about something, and he said, Mark, if you're telling me to do it, I will do it. But I'm just saying I disagree. And I said, Phil, I'm not telling you to do it. I just want to challenge you. I'm just here to challenge you. That's it. Don't act like you know your area better than I know it. And if I don't push you and I don't prod, we might not get to a better outcome. And so I think what you just described there is just spot on. Yeah. Context. And what was the context in it?
Context. Yeah, I'm gonna write it down, because whenever it came out, I was like, damn, that sounded really nice. You lead with context and accountability versus control and consequence.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. So don't use it. I'm going to trademark that before we get off the phone. All right, let's move into some rapid fire. What is a book that changed your mind on, or changed your perspective on business, on leadership, HR?
I love memoirs. I'm always reading memoirs. I think the memoir or biography of the founder of Patagonia, Let My People Go Surfing, is probably the best business memoir I've ever read. I think he's got an incredibly unique leadership style. Has built an amazing business almost by accident. And yeah, I just take so many lessons away from that book. So yeah, that would probably be the one.
Wow, I have to check that out. He did build a pretty unique business. So I love books like that kind of peel it back. Like, I've read some on Netflix. I read Reid Hoffman's No Rules Rule, and just, it was fascinating to have, he kind of peels back the onion and says, here's what was going on for all the news and stuff that you saw, and like all the lessons. And so I'll add that. How do you stay on top of HR and AI trends? Do you have like a news source, or do you like, what's your strategy there?
Yeah, big on Twitter or X, and follow a bunch of people. It's normally on AI, and then like how I and the team think about how we apply it to TA and HR, I think.
Gotcha.
So yeah, big on Twitter and X. A couple of podcasts that are like must listen, but all in podcasts. It's got a little bit political, but it's great. Actually, probably the better version of it today is a podcast called BG Squared, which is with Bill Gurley and Brad Gerstner, once every 2 weeks. Just incredible. And I just consume so much content. It is one of these areas that you just have to just constantly be reading and learning and playing, to your point, right? You're the best example of that, of actually using this tech. So yeah, a lot of great podcasts. Follow a bunch of people on Twitter and X to try and stay up to date. It's never easy given how fast everything's moving.
Yeah, and the only way that you can stay ahead, if that, on those, is to crowdsource for sure. So where can people find and engage with you?
LinkedIn's the best place. I'm like one of these people on Twitter or X that I just like sit in the background. I don't really post, but I'm on it more than any app, but I don't really
Right.
engage. But LinkedIn, I'm on every day engaging. So yeah, definitely LinkedIn is the place to find me.
Awesome. And then how about a mic drop moment, a one-liner that people remember you by?
Attack the day.
I like it. I like it. Well, I am glad that we finally got together. I knew this conversation, it does not feel like we've been talking as long as we have been, and I'm sure there's a lot that we can continue to unpack. So I appreciate you joining, and I'm an avid follower of everything that you and your team does, and so I will probably have you back on whenever you release that next big new thing that gets me all jazzed up.
Love that, Trent, dude. Big fan of you. Love your approach. Love your content. And yeah, super glad we got to do this. So thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate it.